Well, hello, California Family Council. This is Jonathan Keller, and I am here in Fresno, California at the palatial studios of Right to Life of Central California, along with my good buddy and the executive director of Right to Life Central California, John Gerardi.
Good to be with you, Jonathan. Glad to, odd to have you hosting a radio program for once that we were on, but always glad to do some stuff with CFC. So.
Well, the reason John is saying that is these are the studios where we record Right to Life Radio. And every Saturday morning, if you live here in Fresno or whenever it's published, if you're watching online, John hosts a show that he graciously lets me co-host called Right to Life Radio. We talk all about the pro-life issue. We just got done actually recording an episode, but it was such a huge news week talking about all the confirmation hearings and everything else. We kind of wanted to do just a quick little update and a teaser.
Yeah. So nice. We had to do it twice.
That's right.
So, all right.
Well, and for California Family Council, we already have several other regular programs that we do. Of course, Coffee Culture in the Capitol with Sophia and Greg. Sophia Laurie, our outreach director, Greg Burt, our vice president. That show comes out usually every Friday, I think they record that. And then Sophia Laurie also has her own podcast she does, the This Is a Woman podcast. She records that regularly, sometimes more than once a week, depending on the schedule availability of her guests. But very rarely do you get to hear from me, the CEO of California Family Council. So we wanted to record a special update. John was gracious enough to open the studio.
Yeah. So what do you want to go into, Jonathan? We got all the RFK confirmation hearings. We had the whole week of the March for Life, all the big executive orders on abortion stuff from the first sort of week plus of the Trump administration. So what are we getting to?
So I think, John, I wanted to give a little bit of maybe a 10,000-foot overview. There's still a lot. We don't know for sure if RFK is going to be confirmed. There's still some, back and forth about that. We're seeing all the discussions about Kash Patel. We saw news about him being interviewed for the FBI director position today in those hearings. I wanted to, John, give a little bit of a big picture overview, both looking at the March for Life nationally that I had the privilege of being at last week, along with Sophia, but then also the West Coast Walk for Life. I wanted to get John. We didn't get to talk about it on the show that I heard. I wanted to get your sense of kind of a sense of how the mood is on the ground. And I figured you could talk first about it in California, what it was like there at the March for Life, and then I would give you an overview of what I felt it was in D.C.
Yeah, well, your D.C. is always a little bit more plugged in with what's going on sort of policy-wise. Walk for Life West Coast was pretty similar to how it is most year. There was a bit of jubilation with regards to the executive orders that some of the executive orders that Trump had announced and the pardoning of the people who had been convicted under the FACE Act. So the Walk for Life West Coast was, I think, the day after the March for Life in D.C. In general, it seemed like a pretty good mood overall. Walk for Life West Coast has fewer sort of surprise guests who show up to address everybody, like in Washington, where it's a surprise, J.D. Vance is speaking. Oh, surprise, Donald Trump's doing a video address. So not a ton new, but it seemed like everyone was pretty jazzed. I felt like finally the Walk for Life West Coast is back up to kind of its pre-COVID numbers. Which it's taken a while, I think, to kind of recover from the sort of the big decline in numbers after COVID. But in general, I mean, everyone seems jazzed and hopeful about the new administration. Unfortunately, we're all in California, so that's always a damper on things at the Walk for Life West Coast.
I will say, John,
but it is still encouraging to see all the young people who are there and the church groups who are there and everything like that. So.
I know it's a small thing, but obviously I did not get to attend this year, but I was reading some of the reports afterwards, and a good sign that I thought I heard about was that the number of counter-protesters sounds like it was dramatically lower this year.
There was almost none. Yeah, it was like, I think it was about like 20 people. Yeah, I might not even be exaggerating.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was one little group that was across the street from the Civic Center, and that was pretty much it. I mean, I remember prior years, the large contingents of counter-protesters, and I don't know, maybe just the enthusiasm. I don't know. I think a lot of these movements were driven by millennials. And I don't know, maybe as millennials are aging out of their 20s, getting into their 30s, maybe some of the oomph and enthusiasm for these things is getting less. One funny thing I remember, we were walking by and some girl is talking from the United Socialists of something, an explicitly socialist group,
Right.
which I was like, okay, well, that'll make you guys relatable. And she was talking about how the Trump administration was going to target mifepristone and how 63% of abortions are performed via mifepristone and blah, blah. And I was like, boy, it would be really awesome if they did. I'd this is news to me. I'd love to see the Trump administration regulate mifepristone, but no firm commitments on that front yet from RFK Jr. this week. But I'm hopeful we'll get to hear more of this. So,
well, John, this
more
reminds
with
me,
regards to that.
one of my favorite new memes, if you guys are, I know it's difficult to translate memes to audio and even to video unless you've seen the meme, but
Yes.
it's a great meme from Saturday Night Live where I think the character is I think it's a Bill Hader character, and he's sitting there and he goes, "Oh no, that's terrible."
Well, yeah, it's him pretending to be Keith Morrison from Dateline NBC. Where
Yes.
Keith Morrison is always narrating these horrible things that happen on Dateline as if, oh, it was terrible.
Yes, like,
someone was murdered.
Yes.
Yes.
That is it feels like that is what it's like right now, John, being a conservative in California. You're going, oh no, don't throw me into that briar patch. Don't regulate mifepristone.
Oh no, that would be terrible. Yeah. I wish they would regulate mifepristone.
Right.
Anyway, so that was the mood at the Walk for Life West Coast. I think largely the same as it's been. Pretty upbeat about President Trump. When Walter Hoy spoke, Walter Hoy is a pro-life African-American pastor from Oakland who had been arrested for pro-life, the peaceful demonstrating. He was screaming out about President Trump. So he was pretty jazzed. But anyway,
that's awesome.
Other than that, it was fairly restrained. Okay, so tell us about DC.
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't know Jonathan very well, I've known Jonathan for quite a long time.
20 plus years.
20 years. Nothing Jonathan likes more than being around a whole bunch of people.
Yes.
Hobnobbing.
That's right.
Rubbing elbows, mingling,
That's right.
kibitzing, if you will.
Yep.
So I want to hear from you the mood, the scene, not just from the march itself, but also in all your little secret meetings with policy people and people tied to the administration, people in think tanks and other conservative organizations in and around DC with whom you hobnob and kibitz.
Okay.
So what is the mood?
So I will say, just as a background,
All the people you hang out with who are on the cover of New Yorker, they're the cruel kids cover.
Oh,
All the
that's
people who
right.
are at all the Trump inaugural balls.
Yes.
Yes.
So the one thing that was rough, this was my 10th consecutive March for Life, John, which I had not realized till I got there, but I was like, wow.
We all feel bad for you.
But for the first time in 10 years, I got horribly sick. I landed in DC after a red eye, and I was like sore and stiff, and my back hurt. And I said, man, why? This is like the worst red eye I've ever had. Why do I feel so awful? And my lovely wife, Julia, said, hey, pray for me because I think I have a horrible cold, and I think the boys have it too. And now I am home with them sick.
Right.
And I said, oh, great. I think I am also now sick. So
Anyway, so you were sick.
I was moving a lot slower. I didn't get to go into as many secret meetings and secret societies as I normally do.
Okay.
But I will tell you just the mood from being on the other side of the barricades this year. John, as you mentioned, both J.D. Vance, our vice president, and President Trump, our president, both spoke at the March for Life, J.D. Vance in person and President Trump via video. But there was also something unique, John, that I kind of couldn't believe and is a kind of a notable sea change. Both Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader John Thune of the Senate, they both spoke this year.
Yeah. And apparently not big enough draws that neither one was like the headliner.
Right.
They weren't even like the third headliner.
Right.
I mean, it was Trump, Vance, DeSantis,
Yep.
and then those guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good sign because what that shows, in my humble opinion, is that the death of the pro-life movement's influence in the Republican Party has been greatly exaggerated.
Sure. Yeah.
And I remember, John, immediately in 2022, but especially after the 2022 midterms, and especially after the loss in 2023 in
The
Ohio.
Ohio loss, that was the low water moment.
After that happened, and then, I mean, you saw it last year. We spent, John, countless radio hours bemoaning the fact that President Trump was coming out aggressively in favor of IVF, that you had Republicans, running for the hills, and they were terrified and saying, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna now have a new administration that is throwing pro-lifers under the bus." I think that what we saw from the March for Life nationally and the people on stage was that, even though we talked about this, John, in the main show, the Right to Life radio show, even though the rhetoric of some of the Republican Party and some of the candidates was not as articulate as we would like, I think the effectiveness in this administration is actually going to be pretty good.
Right.
And the thing that blew me away, John, when I mentioned these leaders, not only was it the first time ever that both the president and the vice president had spoken at the same event, the thing that blew me away was, did you know, John, this is the first time we had ever had both Republican leaders of Congress speak?
I did not know that. That's good.
And this is just a small thing, John, about the establishment, but Mitch McConnell has basically been the Republican majority or minority leader in the Senate for the last, 15 years, probably?
Yeah.
I mean, going back a ways.
Did he never come to the March for Life?
He never came to the March for Life. Now, look, I'm sure that he sent staff members, and maybe he even had a statement or something that he released. But I encourage everybody, go back. You can find it very easily on YouTube. Go just search on YouTube for the 2025 National March for Life rally. You can watch all the speeches. I encourage you to go watch John Thune's speech. He's the senator from South Dakota. He's the new majority leader. But to see both the Senate leader, who's a Republican, the Speaker of the House, who's a Republican, the governor of the largest Republican state, Florida, who's a Republican, and the runner-up to Trump in the primary last year, along with Vance and Trump, every single person who spoke had a very articulate and passionate speech. They gave a really solid defense of the pro-life issue, and obviously, Trump is going to be a little bit hit and miss there. He was very Trumpy in the way he talked about it, but all the other people had just phenomenal articulate messaging. They weren't pulling their punches. They weren't compromising. And John, something else that I think I'm curious what you think about on this, but J.D. Vance, I think, may represent a really good way forward from I guess you could say a pro-life populism, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, well, Vance didn't really talk about any specific policy things during his speech. He didn't mention, defunding abortion here, defunding abortion there. But what he did really hit on was, I think, it's playing on a theme that he's talked about a number of times. And he talked about this after Ohio, that the pro-life movement is not going to win until we do some stuff to shape the culture. That it's hard to expect people to choose life when they are facing really difficult economic circumstances and don't have the help and support they need to take care of a baby. And just coming forward with negative restrictions of abortion is not going to work, especially where in our country, ultimately, a lot of this stuff is going to be put up to a popular vote. We need, in many states, we're going to need a majority of people to agree with us if we're going to restrict abortion. And it's going to be really hard to do that unless the Republican Party itself. I mean, Vance was very blunt even during the debate, his one vice presidential debate, saying that the Republican Party needs to rebuild the trust of voters on this issue, which I thought was kind of refreshingly honest. And he basically said we need a broader culture where it's easier to have a baby, where it's easier to sustain a family, where it's easier to deal with a pregnancy. That's part of what we need. So he was also kind of talking up like the child tax credits and the Trump plan to kind of increase the child tax credits. But he's caused me to kind of rethink a lot of what I've a little bit what I've thought. I still think that people who say universally, law is downstream of culture. We don't need to make abortion illegal. We need to make abortion unthinkable. I think, like, no, that's dumb to hold on to that maximally. I think actually making it illegal is part of what makes it unthinkable, and then that this is not just a one-way street. But I think he is right, especially in states where, like, you got to get a majority. Well, we now need to get a majority of people in Ohio to say that they want to restrict legal abortion. We need to get about 15% of Ohioans to change their minds on this. How are we going to do that?
Right.
So I think Vance's approach is the way to address that.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I think there was a great line. I won't read the entire thing, but John, one of our mutual friends, who is my counterpart for the Family Institute of Connecticut,
yes,
Peter Wolfgang, he had a great line. He posted a long article talking about J.D. Vance's speech, and he said, more than ever, I feel like this is where I think the pro-life movement needs to go. He goes, this is reflecting now my opinion, which is that Vance made this statement on stage that, look, we need more babies. I want to see more babies born in the United States of America. Yeah. And I think that's a little bit of a shift, John. I mean, obviously among a lot of religious circles, that has always been the case. You've always had, especially, among the Catholic contingent of the pro-life movement, you've always had a very pro-natalist perspective. But I think you're seeing, when you're
carrying that birth rate for this whole country. There you go.
Well, when you're finally seeing now you're seeing the pro-life movement on a national level, you're seeing J.D. Vance and others that are basically making not just an anti-abortion message. Yeah. They're not just saying abortion is bad, we should stop having abortions. They are actually making a pro-baby, pro-family message and saying, actually, family is good and we should have more kids. Right. And that was something that was notable to me, John. Elon Musk he's definitely pro-choice. I mean, you listen to him, he would say he's pro-choice. He has publicly come out. I remember someone asked him one time, I think he was maybe a student for life, had asked him at one of these big speeches on the campaign trail. They asked him a question about abortion, and he basically came out and said, look, it's a difficult issue, but he goes, I think absolutely post-viability, we cannot ever have abortions post-viability because that's murder. If you're choosing to take the life of a person who could survive outside the womb, that's murder. Yeah. So that is a good step, but that's about as far as he was willing to go on the life issue, generally speaking. Yeah. But when J.D. Vance had his line and said, we need to see more babies in America, Elon Musk retweeted that. It's, to my knowledge, it's the only time that Elon has ever retweeted any speech or any line or any coverage of the March for Life. And look, I'm not saying that this is a by itself, it's certainly not going to change the game for the pro-life movement. But the idea is that is appealing to people outside the traditional pro-life circles.
Well, and if the richest man on the world, who's now seemingly committing himself to being a kind of political financier, right, along the lines of like George Soros, right, if he can be brought along to some sort of way of thinking like this, actually, I think that could be
a game changer.
A game changer. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Could someone convince Elon Musk of, hey, Elon, drop $30 million. Why don't you drop $30 million on a California ballot initiative to just end post-viability abortion in California?
Yeah, just saying.
Our ballot initiative process is pretty easy. You drop $30 million, you can pass a ballot initiative. Yeah, I mean, it's not that complicated. No. And God knows one thing Elon Musk has is $30 million
Buku
multiplied by several gazillions. Yes.
So all this to say, and Colton, how long are we into this episode so far right now?
Producer Colton.
1939.
Okay.
1939.
So
all right.
I think we'll wrap up today, but we will try to maybe do some additional episodes like this in the future. I come over and record usually 2 or 3 times a month with John. Inevitably, I always miss like 1 week a month because I'm traveling or something. But these were just some first week thoughts after the March for Life, the Walk for Life West Coast. I will say, if you are wanting to hear more, of course, you can go to our Facebook page, whether you're watching this on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Make sure that you follow us on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We'll cross-post this everywhere. I also encourage you, go look up Right to Life of Central California. Look up John Gerardi himself. Johnny, your X handle, your Twitter handle.
At Fresno Johnny. So there you go. At Fresno Johnny. Easy enough. And
then if you look up, again, just a search for Right to Life Central California, you'll find all the other socials there. You can watch the episodes that we have done here. You can either watch them online or you can subscribe to the podcast, Right to Life Radio.
There you go.
And I will also encourage you all, we've been talking about the March for Life and everything, go to our website, californiafamily.org, and sign up for the California March for Life. We will be there on the steps of the Capitol in Sacramento. There. Johnny will be there. We'll, maybe a bus from down here.
Definitely a bus from down here.
So that will be Monday, March 31st. We would love to have you all join us there. But for now, John, I will just say I am, looking back the last 10 days, I am both kind of overwhelmed and relieved in terms of just grateful and if you would have told me...
Glad that Kamala Harris is not the president. Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean...
Just imagine how different all these conversations would be right now.
Well, and
staring down the barrel of 8 years of that.
Well, and I'll just tell you, my 9 years ago, when I attended my first March for Life in a long time, the mood in D.C. was one of a lot of... trepidation with how well Donald Trump was doing in the polls. And there was, at that point, most of the people that I was talking to were still on board either the Ted Cruz bandwagon or the Marco Rubio bandwagon. Yeah. And the idea was, well, you know, if we can get either one of these guys in, then we'll be in great shape, as long as, God forbid, somehow we don't get this crazy thrice married billionaire, you know, crazy guy who is pro-choice. And I just, I will say it is remarkable sometimes how the good Lord works things together for good. You never know how things are going to turn out, and
clearly not.
I am just supremely grateful that we're in the position we're in.
There you go.
We still got our work cut out for us over the next 4 years. But
agreed.
Man, what a blessing to have these opportunities as opposed to the Kamala administration.
Yeah, that would have been a total lack of opportunity for anything.
Okay, since I said that, I have to do one little addendum because I just jogged my own memory on something.
All right.
The David DeLayden case.
Yeah.
We don't need to get deep into this, but the fact that he is not being prosecuted now.
Right. So is he like kind of completely out of the legal woods now, or does he still have some civil litigation that he's facing?
I think there might be still some civil litigation, but the one big case that is pending, essentially they
dismissed all the criminal charges.
Yeah, it's this weird kind of deferred plea agreement thing. I've been following some bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, it's like he kind of pleads guilty to a misdemeanor now, but then the misdemeanor can go away as long as he abides by the terms of the agreement.
Right.
So he's basically going to get off with no criminal record out of this.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing that I will just say to that note, we can do a deep dive on that sometime, John. I'd actually love to have David on, or maybe some of his attorneys, to talk about this. But the thing that is amazing to me is this was a state of California case. They submitted this case initially. They did the initial investigation in 2016. And all throughout the first Trump administration, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, despite the fact that Donald Trump was in office and that he was ostensibly a pro-life president, the Department of Justice in California was kind of like, screw you, we don't care what you say, Trump. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do whatever the heck we want.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that continued during the Biden administration. I think it's really remarkable that Trump could not pardon David for this because these were state crimes.
No, these are state,
But I just think it's amazing that within a week of Trump being inaugurated, all of a sudden, the California Department of Justice was like, maybe
this is the time to kind of give up on this case that's obviously going nowhere and has big time constitutional problems with it.
And also, in my mind, I felt this on a bunch of different fronts. You look at the speed with which Trump is moving this time compared to last time. And you look at how much better written a lot of these executive orders are than the ones were 8 years ago. If if I had to guess, I think that a lot of the people at the California Department of Justice and just California in general are looking and going, oh, crap.
Mhm.
It looks like Trump actually kind of knows what he's doing this time.
Yeah. Well, I think he clearly. I had been a little skeptical whether how many lessons would be learned from Trump 45, and clearly a lot of lessons were learned.
Yes.
And this is a much more effective iteration of President Trump.
And I am confident saying that I would be willing. I'm not really a gambling man, but I would almost be willing to bet my house that these charges would not be dismissed if we had President Kamala Harris in the White House.
Possibly not.
So,
all right.
With that being said, thanks everybody for listening. John, Colton, producer Colton, thank you for hosting us today, and we will hope to be back sometime soon.
All right.